Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Despite the devastating mission that the colonial administrators have been executing for years past by erecting multiple extortion points, grounding all local institutions, infringing into the traditional settings, grabbing lands, kidnapping for ransoms, amongst others, there is still hope for Ambazonia and Ambazonians. The way out of the evil plan of the La Republic of Cameroon colonial government is embedded in the bravery and the gallant of the Amazonian State Army. The Amazonian State Army actually needs the support of all to fast the completion of the divine assignment entrusted to them. A divine assignment to not only chase out the thief La Republique, but to equally preserve and protect that which is Ambazonia. Oh well, it's not only been interesting and intense on the home front, it's also been interesting and intense as well on the international scene, which we'll dive into, but only after the prime headlines.
Here are the prime headlines for tonight. We'll start with a report of the epileptic electricity supply causing havoc on a church in Bamenda. The Ambazonian Security Army of Boyo shatters an armored car of La République de Cameroon terrorist forces, sparing no occupants. La République de Cameroon colonial government continues to use and dump Ambazonians. They continue to take advantage of Ambazonians. Also tonight, Okalai Bilai exposes colonial administrators' money-making agenda in Ambazonia. And on the African scene, French influence in Africa calls for greater African autonomy. Ukraine is deploying the classic American missile, which is more like bringing a Cold Warrior back to life. Now, let's in full briefings. The Ambazonian State Army has sent a message stating that they will not continue to sit and watch Ambazonians suffer. They have declared, in simple words, that enough was enough to all colonial administrators and their terrorist forces in Ambazonia. What the colonists and had as green pastures where they were very relaxed. They said it is all over. The Ambazonian State Army has turned the pasture red, and they say they are ready to move to the independence of Boya. The Ambazonian State Army is bent on making Ambazonia ungovernable for Lao Republic to Cameroon colonial administrators with constant ambushes and confrontations. Of recent is the shattering of an armored car by the Ambazonian State Army with evidence of no occupant surviving the trap. As tactful as the ASA carried the attack, no casualty was recorded. Well, this is where we will begin the full briefings of under 39. How are you doing, sir?
Very well, you. Well, the message from Boyo to the BS regime holders on Wednesday yesterday, January 31st, 2024, is that Amazonia is for Ambazonians and any stranger must leave by the rules of the land. The message has been sent clear and loud over the past few months, dating back to 2023, just last year. The Amazonian State Army has left no stone unturned, determined to safeguard the lives and property of the peoples of Ambazonia, gallantly putting the words and actions to safeguard the sovereignty of the peoples of Ambazonia. In 2024, this year alone, just 1 month into the new year, the Amazonian State Army warriors in their different counties have shown resilience and absolute strength from Bui, the land of no return to Fako, to Boya, to Kumba. Amazonian State Army has dominated in all fights with La République du Cameroon's army. Well, just recently as well, the brave Amazonian State Army from Boyo County shattered an armored vehicle full of neighboring La République du Cameroon terrorizing soldiers.
Well, the tactical ambush was a leader that no terrorist soldier from neighboring French Cameroon could survive with their skillfulness with which the Ambazonian State Army carried out the attack. None of them got injured. This successful attack is coming at a time when the Ambazonian State Army in different counties is sending terrorist forces to the Bulu land lifeless. I mean, we've heard reports from Bui, from Fako, and from Kumba over the last few years and over the last few months, and it's been amazing. The Amazonian State Army has been gallantly winning so far. Well, to join forces with us this evening, we have our news director, Mr. Cha Paddy King, who would come in to throw more lights. Mr. Cha. Yes, please. You're welcome to tonight's briefing. Now, over the past few months, dating back to 2023 July, we could start from there, progressively from there. Or let's even go back a bit to June. June, July, August, down to December, and even early January 2024. We've seen an extra push, an extra force. Should we even say an extra determination from the then Ambazonia Restoration Forces and now Ambazonian State Army? What do you think equipped them with so much gallantness that we've seen so far?
First of all, I want to congratulate the authorities on the ground. You know, there are authorities that are on the ground actually fighting, and the leadership for the Amazonian self-defense apparatus can be created by President Sam. Making Amazonia ungovernable and free the nation in 2017. But the good thing that we observe, like rightly said, is the escalating mass of the terror, as my friend said, by what we call today the Amazonian state with the evolution from the time of the ASA into the reported, we're seeing recently how the year has begun with the big force carrying their life that much. Um, taking responsibility in that. And now,
Okay.
for some time, has been quiet. Pastor for some time has been quiet. And it's important that the fight is not just across money to visa and voting. There's some digitalization which increases the cost of occupation for the colonial administration. And the exciting part of this comes at a time when you are moving to trying to pursue the agenda or the propaganda that the recently launched. The war is far from finished, and the Ambazonia state on the front is determined that until there is a negotiated settlement, they will continue to protect our women from rape. We see that the Cameroon army is intimidating our women and girls. They will continue to protect our people from manslaughter, from incest, and so on and so forth. This clash is the hands of Ambazonia. And we thinking that the year 2024 will be a deadlier one for the French Cameroon occupation of all and the Cameroon regime that
All right.
All right. Mr. Pat is still on the Amazonian State Army in their firepower so far. We've seen that the war in Amazonia has actually rendered the coffers of La République penniless, and not just that, even to the point of borrowing. Owing to these particular facts, the strategy of making the war too expensive to continue, would you say the Amazonian State Army has made that possible, making the war too expensive to continue? Do you think that strategy has worked so far?
I would say that the strategy is not really working very well. Good thing about thank you for that question. The good thing about it now is the Amazonian State Army has a double full strategy on its back. We're not only demobilizing the forces of occupation, we also neutralizing their crops. We are aware of what is currently happening. The concealment of the India that is being controlled from knowing to losing their grip in every county. Just last week, when people reported how that the ADF was trying to play um, goes down in Dewey, and that was in this year by the Union Ambazonian Army. So we are there's a strategy which is currently in motion, and that strategy is not just to stop have the forces of occupation, but area across. And we calling on the civilian population to continuously collaborate with the government, to continuously collaborate with the genuine Ambazonian state to make sure that they report some of these cases of irregularities. Numbers being arrested and also we take a responsibility and like we must repeat that during the end of the year that we will take steps and this year. And there are tools that by mid this year the government will have kept and have control over the vast territory the nation.
All right. Thank you. We can only hope for that. Well, that's really impressive on the part of the ASA, but there are other reports that we know you would like to put in your 2 cents and react to, which would give in the course of the news. So just hold on and we'll go on with the reports and we'll get back to you, Mr. Paddy.
All right, let's visit Bamenda and see what the electricity has done there. The electricity sector is an area in which the colonial government of La Republic du Cameroon has failed to develop. Students, business owners, and inhabitants of some neighborhoods are having difficulty coping without electricity. The electricity supply of recent is epileptic, and that we've reported here too. And when it is restored, it often comes with a very high voltage, destroying appliances in some cases, causing fire outbreaks. The colonial administration has no remorse for Ambazonian students in the area. Well, this regime will, in the months ahead, organize harmonized end-of-circle examination for deprived Ambazonian students to compete with those in other areas who have been studying with electricity. A case in point is the burning down of the Cameroon Baptist Convention Church on the Bui Bamenda Street. The church was raised to ashes by a fire that erupted from a short circuit provoked by the return of electricity at a higher voltage.
Something else about the power supply in the Cameroons, which also brought to you, is the mentioned falls. The Cameroon Baptist Convention Church of the Boya Bamenda Street branch is now in ruins after being ravaged by fire. The fire that brought the church building down emanated from high voltage after the return of electricity from a period of blackout. The fire outbreak occurred in the evening hours of Tuesday, January 30th, 2024, and the magnitude of the fire was such that some faithful and onlookers were helpless. The Colonial Firefighting Brigade never showed up as expected for rescue, despite the numerous calls made to alert them of the incident. Though the fire was prevented from crossing to nearby houses, the CBC Boya Bamenda Street Church was completely burnt down. This is just one of the numerous disasters that the people of Ambazonia have suffered as a result of the epileptic nature of the electricity supply, often accompanied by unstable voltage.
All right, Okalai is in the news tonight. The colonial administration is having an agenda to squeeze Ambazonians dry financially. Now, the mission of the evil ones in the life of a Christian, described in the Bible, is to kill, steal, and to destroy. Well, it's the same mission inherited by La Republic de Cameroon colonial government in the life of Ambazonians, and Ambazonia is what we'll try to find out tonight. La Republic de Cameroon can be said to be the thief that is stealing the joy, peace, and happiness of Ambazonia. And there is no perfect definition than to say freedom must be gotten. Despite the devastating mission that the colonial administrators have been executing for years, passed by erecting multiple extortion points, grounding all local institutions, infringing into the traditional settings. That's not all, grabbing lands, kidnapping for ransom, and others. There is still hope for Ambazonia and Ambazonians.
Well, the way out of the evil plan of the La République du Cameroon colonial government is embedded in the bravery of the Amazonian State Army ASA. The ASA needs the support of all to fast the completion of the assignment entrusted to them. An assignment to not only take out the thief who is La République, but to equally preserve and protect that which belongs to them, Ambazonia. This report captures the revelation of the colonial governor of the Atlantic zone of Ambazonia, Okala Biliai, on the agenda of the colonial administrators, which is to make money by all means.
The colonial governor of the Atlantic zone, Bernard Okala Biliai, has exposed his agenda to the Atlantic zone of Ambazonia, which is money grabbing. This was known during the installation of the newly assigned Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Fako County, Viang Mikala, on Thursday, January 25th, in Victoria. Colonial Governor Okalai Bilai warned the incoming Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Fako County that he will only enjoy his support if he does not deviate from the agenda. Now, the word is, what is his agenda? Now, in his words, he clearly says, you will only enjoy from me all the support and necessary protection, stressing on money grabbing. But if, on the contrary, you choose a different path, then you will find yourself responsible for your action. Why should a leader even say that in the first place?
Well, the stress of money grabbing by the colonial government is just the fruit from the three in the heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Well, this is a popular phrase. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. He meant that consistently sinful words and deeds are are indicative of a sinful heart. The colonial governor does not talk and will never talk to his subordinates to synergize to see that the people of Ambazonia have a better atmosphere that could actually even empower themselves. His point of focus is only on money.
All right, moving on. Let's take a look at Ambazonians again. Now, some Ambazonians are indeed blinded to the point that they are unable to see that La République du Cameroon is not keeping them in good fortune. They are not seeing that yet. They will be dumped after being used, that they have seen on a regular basis. But the question is, why are they not learning? Well, it pains the Cameroonians to see Ambazonians whom they consider strangers occupy key positions in government. Well, they will stop at nothing to see that the post of responsibility occupied by an Ambazonian is vacant, even if it must be by killing.
Well, in the case of Zacchaeus Forge Dam, former director of Chantier Naval, and the most celebrated of all the directors of that institution in terms of changing the face of the institution, is now in jail. He was framed and thrown in jail by jealous Cameroonese after taking over from him. The output of Chantier Naval keeps dropping with workers constantly on strike. Another Amazonia, which is the subject of this report, is Musonge Derrick, a colonial DO with the La République du Cameroon colonial government that was trailed from Yaoundé and killed in the Amazonian town of Boya.
Musonge Derrick, a colonial divisional officer in Yaoundé, was killed on Monday, the 29th of January, by a special squad that trailed him from Yaoundé. The assailant reportedly dragged Muson Derrick from his car, ruthlessly shooting him before setting his vehicle, along with some others, ablaze. A disturbing video that later circulated on social media depicts a soldier known as Moja Moja. The question here is, when did Moja Moja become a soldier? Well, let's continue. I'm a member of the colonial base force making a propaganda video at the scene. He said that the separatists escaped before his arrival while Musanje was lying by a car in flames. Critics argue that Moja Moja's duty to protect the Cameroonian people and their property was abandoned as he left Musanje to succumb to his injuries, and his interest was in shooting videos. This is simply evident that superior squad from high quarters minded this particular claim.
Well, Moja Moja was later videotaped consoling Musonge's stepson while at the mortuary. The question is, where has humanity gone? The horrifying incident not only highlights the brutality of supposed forces of protection, but also raises concerns about the morality and ethics surrounding the actions of those in colonial authority. An example, Chief Moja Moja. President Sako shared his thoughts in a tweet on his official X page about Derrick Musonge. The president tweets has it that Derrick Musonge, a privileged, quote, brat, a colonial DO in Yaoundé, was followed by his killers. A special squad from Yaoundé took him out in Boya during a separatist, quote, attack to blame it on the war. The chickens are coming home. What? Who replaces him. This is the tweet.
While many others have expressed outrage over the colonial soldier's failure to fulfill his duty, leaving a man to die while indulging in a propaganda war. Osanjo's tragic fate comes just 4 years after that of his wife, the late journalist Becky Jem.
Now, the assassination of Musonge was carefully planned, and on a day they thought it would be easier to shift the blame to the Amazonian State Army before assassinating him. They had already planned the one to replace him. The person who will take over his office will attest to the fact that his post was being eyed by those who consider themselves legitimate owners of the position.
All right, and in moving on, we have Mr. Tar still on the other side. I'm sure he would want to air his thoughts on this particular evil act. Mr. Tar,
Hello, Monica here.
yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. What they just the death of this young man, so, is the consequences of betrayal, and that's the cost of betrayal. It's unfortunate to see how some individuals, those who we call America, could be so excited. How do you see it straight? That was several long a government that you're serving that are not only rate the economy of your nation, that are not only deny you of your effective right as a people, is killing your people every day. And then you're serving them. What is the rationale? Is it the salary? Because I blame it on all of these graduates of finance and the parliamentarians who are still in the kangaroo parliament in their home. I blame the delay of our total freedom on them. If these individuals have been quoted the colonial administration of the colonial government, it will start the way. And this is not an attitude that we can for Gordon Dinka highlighted that in food in the early 90s. Food is a food. If you would just help your parliament area to withdraw from their acceptance, you will make the argument different and easier for us. But food is a God. Look at food is putting very like a God. Look at his home today in Santana being transformed into a colonial base where they use the song with race and kill his own people. Truly is a man that should have been well respected. There are many examples that I give. Look at the chamber factory in Poland. And we just reported there about Moja, who is also going to be a victim of the culture. So this is the mantra of the colonial government, which is well understood now. What they do is you're being used and you're done. They just use you and keep you. The same thing happens with this number, who was contracted. He was not fighting on Ambazonia. That is well known. I'm talking about a of the age. He was killed by the same people he had served with the same people. So when some of our people put nation first, put our collective purpose first, and keep aside themselves, when that will be done, there will not be people. And we're going to have many more when there will be that you have no use. That is what they will do. They will neutralize you and try to blame it on the Amazonian restoration or on the Amazonian State Army. And this is what I want to say. The Amazonian State Army owes no apology for any Ambazonian who was here, who is caught on crossfire. I have caught fire by trying to stop our argument as a people of our independence. So on a day where you are born, you pay back home because there is lockdown or there is a lockdown. The government has declared a 1 week lockdown in defiance of 11 February. And we are hoping that you as an Ambazonian will not be caught on crossfire because you want to keep your own faith. This is this will definitely the faith of Derek will definitely be your faith if you choose to despite the fact that Ambazonia is for Ambazonia and it should be governed by Ambazonia and we should dictate the faith of our own people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cha.
All right, we'll be moving on to the African report. There also would have Mr. Pa, Mr. Taz Hattie King come back, join us to give his thoughts about the report on Francois Afrique right after the break. Well, as we reported on Tuesday, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, in a joint statement on Sunday, announced their decision to withdraw from the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS), citing concerns about the influence of foreign powers and viewed ECOWAS as a threat to their member states rather. This moves further isolating their military regimes from the regional political and economic bloc ECOWAS. Nigeria, as the current chair of ECOWAS on Tuesday for the first time since the joint statement, expressed disappointment in the military authorities of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso for their joint decision to leave the regional alliance. Now, due to this move by the three juntas, also taking into consideration the serial coups in Africa in recent years, we delved into the crux of it all, Francois Afrique, leaving so many unanswered questions on Tuesday, which we'd like to give answers to today from Undaunted perspective.
Now let's delve into the Franco-Afrique. Franco-Africa term used to describe the historical and complex relationship between France and its former African colonies, refers to the political, economic, and cultural ties that exist between France and other countries. The purpose of Francophone has been a subject of debate, owing to the fact that some argue that it has been allowed France to maintain influence and control over its former colonies, as has been seen in several instances and incidences from especially 2023, while others believe the notion that it represents the intricate and evolved relationship between France and its African counterparts and has facilitated cooperation and development. But the question is, has this really been the case?
Well, to answer that question, we'll take a look at the 11 agreement which every former French colony had to sign before gaining their supposed independence, which shows how France robbed its colonies to keep them in perpetual slavery up to this very 21st century. Now, wondering what we mean by that, let's take a look at the few, in fact, all of the 11 agreements, then you get it. The first agreement here says the colonial debt to repay the benefits of colonization. The second point of the agreement says the automatic confiscation of financial reserves. That's why I have a lot of African countries still spending the francs CFAs. The third agreement here is the right of first refusal on any raw or natural resource discovered in the African country. The fourth agreement is the priority to French interest and companies in public procurement and public tenders. The fifth agreement here is the exclusive right to provide military equipment and train military officers of the colonies. Adding to that, number five agreement is the sixth one that says the right for France to deploy troops and intervene militarily in the country to defend France's interest. The seventh agreement here is the obligation to make French the official language of the country and the language for education. On the eighth agreement, we see the obligation to use this franc CFAs, the franc of the French colonies in Africa, that is the franc CFA, as the national currency tender. And the agreement for the ninth agreement here is the obligation to send to France an annual balance sheet and a report on the state of reserves. No report, no money. And the 10th agreement is to renounce any military alliance with other countries unless authorized by France. The last agreement, number 11, says the obligation to ally with France in the event of war or a global crisis. Now, with these 11 stated agreements, you'd want to ask what's really independent about this French colony's independence?
Well, that's not all over the years. There have been calls for greater autonomy and reducing French influence in former French colonies, more evident in recent years with the argument that it has hindered economic and political independence in Africa. Proving this argument to be more than just that is the 11th argument which Stursmart just brought to you. French influence in Africa can be seen in various aspects. One example is the use of the French language as a lingua franca in many African countries. French is often used in government, education, media, and business, and it plays a significant role in communication and cultural exchange. Additionally, France maintains political and economic ties with its former African colonies, which can influence decision making processes and policies. French companies also have a presence in sectors such as infrastructure, energy, and telecommunications, contributing to economic influence. African nations have taken several steps to reduce their dependency on France. They have sought to diversify their economic partnership by engaging with other countries and regions such as China, the United States, and other African nations. This allows them to expand trade and investment opportunities beyond traditional ties with France. Additionally, African countries have been working towards regional integration, fostering intra African trade and cooperation through organizations like the African Union and regional economic communities. These efforts aim to promote self reliance and reduce reliance on former colony and colonial powers like France.
Well, African nations have been diversifying their economic partnerships in various ways. An example, countries like Nigeria and South Africa have strengthened their ties with emerging powers like China and India, resulting in increased trade and investment. Additionally, many African nations have been actively engaging with other African countries through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, which promotes intra-African trade and economic integration. This allows African nations to reduce their dependency on any single external partner and foster more diverse economic relations. Another example would be Mali and all the other juntas leaning towards Russia for military aid and more. Also, the growing desire amongst African nations to assert their independence and reduce dependency on former colonial powers like France has led to a shift in power dynamics and a push for more equitable relations. Additionally, the rise of other global powers has also impacted French influence in the region. It is a complex and evolving situation with various factors at play and a high chance of African nations gaining back autonomy that couldn't come with their independence. Well, like we said, we had Mr. Paddy King still in our studio tonight who wants to give us a little more to this particular report. Very well. Good evening.
Yes, I'd like to first of all appreciate you for this is amazing. And it is a revolution in Africa. I would call it a new revolution in West Africa that should ever respect across it is an open secret that France is solely dependent on Africa for their activities. You want to praise Africa, blaming Macron's government for allowing the eyes of Africans to be open. Now, when you ladies were raising the agreement, they involved. I don't even think we need to call that an agreement. I will call it a decalogue of France coming to the fold because there is no right now people will ever stand to agree with such a thing. So whatever happened was not an agreement. It was a French commandment or commandment that was imposed on their colonies now. And you see Africa decade after decade, taking the things of getting illegality to this criminality, to this fraud, to this evil that has made African economy. I want to focus myself on the evidence that is used in West Africa. The Sahel agreement is pushing out the French regime in a very dramatic, in an extraordinary way. That we want to see that happen in Denmark. Now, for you guys, Ambazonia is a president of Ambazonia. The fight is bigger than just the Kamali. The fight is the French nation because the economy of the Cameroon is the South Cameroon. It's only dependent on Amazonia. From their contract, they send 70% of their entire GDP is from the South Cameroon. Now, and that's where 22%. And that's why one is helping them in the war, financing them in the war, so that they can fight in Amazon. I'm thinking that the Amazonian leadership should actively start moving towards West Africa and create an alliance with this useful leadership is back in Burkina Faso in Niger that they are thinking that Africa no longer a plan trying to struggle or depend on what doesn't belong to them. So if you look at the government, because the government is fighting to get and all of these other West African states. If you look at it, the French legacy is itself. One, Ambazonia is becoming ungovernable. There is what we call a constitutional out of that, and basically you find out that all the French enterprises, the contracts that are typically that is supposed to lead from the power in the peninsula or and goes in jeopardy. And France, the gains of France in Africa can be counted. This is why they embrace and you would have them who are causing everyone to actualize their autonomy over their sovereign territory. So that those two parties that are going to affect the economy in West Africa, I don't think so. It's true that trade will not be Nigeria has very strong currency. The Nigerian government just have to serve Nigeria and not to serve West Africa. But we want to look into the bigger picture. The bigger picture is not limited to the economy in Nigeria. It has to do with the exploitation of resources in the Gulf of Guinea. Remember, the richest region in Africa is the Gulf of Guinea. And that is where France has moved. So, an alliance between Ambazonia and these West African states will now actualize their sovereignty over their nation, will just keep France within a very short time. Thank you very much. That's what I actually wanted to say.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Patty. But then there's a recent development, something that happened just 2 days ago, and there's been series of this particular development, especially on the African scene. What I'm talking about is the return of African properties, African artistic properties, and amongst others, back to Africa. And we've seen that happen several times. Sculptures returned back to from Switzerland, amongst others. The most recent happened to be this plane, Italy, who just handed back Ethiopia's first ever plane. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said so on Tuesday after 9 decades taken by Italy fascist invading forces. What do you have to say about this particular development all around Africa?
That's the good news, and that's what inspires many other things. Whatever we take it from the ground in mind to be returned. And it's not even just nothing. We find the Prime Minister of South and Kenya is also requesting Britain to pay them for slavery. Africa has a lot to demand from the West. First of all, because you have most of the Western nations are still pursuing their hegemony in these African countries globally, or these black countries globally. So whatever is African is representing Africa. It's good. They have started at some level by making sure that trust that was taken. That's not all. For instance, if we have to look about trust, how much is one going to return in Africa in terms of cost and exploitation? So we need to start from somewhere. And then we will return whatever we deserve. Taking full control of our territory is good. Keeping them out of the inheritance to patrol. When we start managing our resources and we start having economic progress and strength, we can go dash or call on them to reject what they do because they have to give it back. You can't come and express or speak the meaning. Have you seen the way France is reporting out? Have you seen the way they are treating out? This and got to stop. And one way for us to stop will be for us to take control and request to for them to pay us back for what has been stolen. Truly, what is African should be given back to Africa.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Tapari King. It's always good to hear your informed thoughts here on Undaunted. But with that, we've come to the end of this very interview section. And after now, we'll be getting straight into the news across the globe. Thank you once again, Mr. Tapari King.
Our news across the globe. Despite the challenges hitting Ukraine, it seems they are determined to hit harder this year. The Pentagon is on the brink of delivering ground-launching small diameter bomb, known as GLSDB, to the Ukrainian military, a move that is set to reshape the dynamics of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As ground combat in Ukraine grinds on underscoring the need for artillery warfare, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced on January 30th that the first batch of the newest self-propelled artillery complex 2S-35 Coalition SV or the Coalitia SV is at the final stage of production. The state defense over for the production of new self-propelled artillery. That's not all. Ukraine is deploying this classic American missile, bringing Cold War back to life. Ukraine's military has shared the first image of the newly operational deployed M23 Hawk. It's known as the IHawk air defense battery, the American medium-range air defense system, identifiable by its distinctive M192 three-rail launchers, was widely deployed during the Cold War and continues to serve in many countries more than 60 years after it was first deployed. The missile seen in the photo bears marking indicating that it was manufactured in 1981, I beg your pardon. That missile was manufactured in 1981. Now, just so you know, in the fall of 2022, Spain announced that it would donate a battery of 6 launches, which arrived that December and followed that donation with 12 more launches. The United States, meanwhile, furnished supporting radars and control system for 2 Hawk batteries, as well as compatible missiles and missile refurbishing services. Sweden, on the other hand, has also contributed key hardware to enable the attraction of Ukraine's Hawks.
Well, still on the global scene, Russia is using electronic warfare devices to stop Ukraine's drones. On the other hand, Russia is deploying electronic warfare units to counter Ukrainian drone strikes, but it's having to disable mobile internet across swathes of the country to do so. This is according to Russian media reported. Now, government authorities ordered 4G network to be switched off at night between January 25th to 30th in Leningrad, Novgorod, and Pskov in northwestern Russia to enable anti-drone units. The report, citing Russian telecommunications sources, said that LTE wireless broadband and electronic warfare units both operate on the same frequencies. It added that electronic warfare can interfere with cell phone data. Meanwhile, North Korea has fired long-range cruise missiles for strategic striking drill. North Korea leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the test firing of new submarine-launched cruise missiles and reviewed a project to build a nuclear submarine, state-run media town told newsmen. The North's new Puswahal 331 missiles were fired Sunday and flew in the sky above the East Sea, precisely for 7,421 seconds and 7,445 seconds to hit the island target. Korean Central News Agency reported this. The flight times translate to just about 2 hours. Kim praised the result and said that the nuclear weaponization of the Navy is an urgent task of the times, according to the KCNA report. He also discussed issues related to the building of a nuclear-powered submarine and other new type warships.
Well, away from the war, many countries are clamoring to join the BRICS group. Nearly 3 dozen countries are seeking entry into the China and Russian-backed BRICS economic group. Member state South Africa said this on Wednesday, weeks after the body expanded its membership for the first time in more than a decade. 34 countries have submitted an expression of interest in joining the bloc of major emerging economies, South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor told reporters without naming the nations. Russia was accepting those applications after assuming rotation chairmanship of the group this year. And will it be the first member to oversee the body since it significantly expanded its global footprint at the start of the year, when Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, Iran, and Egypt formally joined. The Russian Navy is trying to make the ultimate comeback. Well, according to reports from the Kremlin, the Russian Navy will receive 12 surface warships and 4 submarines in 2024, while it also claimed to achieve total import substitution in the construction of those vessels. The resurgence of the Russian Navy is already underway. The United States has increasingly put a focus on the size of the People's Liberation Army plan, which is now the largest naval force in the world. However, it may not just be China that should be seen as a potential concern. So that's all we have for you tonight on Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the major stories.
Oh, well, on Undaunted tonight, we had the topic of the epileptic electricity supply causing havoc on the CBC church in Bamenda. Also, we talked about the Ambazonian State Army of Boyo shattering an armored car of La Republic terrorizing forces as well. And La Republic colonial government continuing to use and dump Ambazonians. And of course, not to forget that we had our amazing news director who's very informed talk about some of these topics with us on Undaunted tonight.
Tonight on Undaunted, we brought to you how Kalai Belai is exposing colonial administrators' agenda on making money off Ambazonians. On the African scene, we talked about the French influence in Africa, while they are calling for greater African autonomy. And on the foreign scene, Ukraine deploying the classic American missile, which is bringing the Cold War back to life. That's it for tonight on Undaunted, bringing to the news on Church Stories. On behalf of Stretch Smart and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you for tuning in.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber TV Images. Good night and God bless you.